So here I have Radium's EcoBoost port injection kit along with 1300cc injectors to go with it. Eventually plan on going with E85, maybe not right off the bat, but got them just a little bit bigger just in case for stuff down the road. The only thing that I've put together so far has been the line mounted fuel pressure regulator, and it was literally just putting this fitting on and this fitting on. You have two port options for a fuel pressure gauge, and I'm gonna wait to get a gauge until I can figure out which way I want the fuel pressure regulator. So, but we're just gonna go through their instructions. It's kind of goofy. You gotta drill out one of the like spacers inside the intake. You gotta drill one out, open it, cut it. It's a little goofy. It's a little weird, but I'm gonna go through, read the instructions, kind of go through how to put it together. It should be pretty straightforward, but hey, I'm just gonna do it. And then hopefully by the end of this week, I will have the up pipe, I guess you could call it, so I can mount the turbo and get all those lines ran on the turbo side. So we're gonna jump right into putting the port injection kit together for this car, and I guess go from there. Okay, so unfortunately, the hardest part about this being like a how-to video is my engine was already apart. This was originally a Ford Edge 2.0, so the intake was a front-wheel drive intake, and obviously that's not going to be used in this application, so I had all that stuff removed and I taped the ports up weeks ago. So obviously this might be a little bit of a different situation or scenario for you, but getting to the point of getting your intake off, that will be forward moving from where we are at. So the next step is make sure all the gaskets are in their slots where they're supposed to be. They come in this plate, so you shouldn't have to do anything. Just make sure none of them fell out. You've got two dowel pins here. Those are going to line up with the two dowel pin holes on the head. You want to put a little bit of anti-seize lubricant on the ends of all the bolts. Put all the bolts in hand tight. For some reason, they want you, just to make sure that you're not going to have any clearance issues, they want you to put your intake bolts just kind of hand tight into here to begin with. They want to make sure that you can get those, the hardware for the plate snug. And then once that all, once you know everything clears, then you take it and torque it down to, I believe, 15 foot-pounds, but I'm going to check. So let's do that next. All right, we're gonna see if we can deal with the anti-seize without getting it all over ourselves. I doubt it'll happen, but let's see if we can do it. So first bolt, carefully drop that through. We're gonna line our dowel pins up and put this on hand tight. Okay, found my T-handle. This is gonna make it a lot easier. So one bolt down. Okay, now we can take the intake manifold bolts out. I still don't fully understand why that would interfere with anything, but again, just what the instructions say. So, intake manifold bolts out. Now we can actually snug this guy up. right, and it does say 15, is it foot-pounds or inch-pounds? 15 foot-pounds. So, okay, little redneck ingenuity off-camera torquing, but they're tight. So, next step would be take your intake manifold, and more dowel pins again, 1 and 1. You can get the middle one in, but you can't get that one in because your intake is now hitting, get it again, it's hitting right there. So what the instructions recommend, pop this sleeve out. Here, let me set this down. What the instructions recommend for this is to pop your sleeve out, take a small Dremel and trim that, and then take a Dremel and trim the sleeve so that when you put it in, it's essentially notched, so it's still spaced correctly, but it clears this guy. So, kind of a pain in the ass. That's probably one of the bigger pain in the butt things about this. All right, after you cut and notch your sleeve and you trim the ear of the intake off, you now have an intake that fits, if I can get the right angle, with a little bit of room. So the hardest part was, and it's hard to tell in the video, this other side on the right had to be trimmed more. So it's kind of oblonged, which sucks, but that's kind of what the sleeve will help with. It should be fine. And they send a special washer with the kit for that exact reason. So now intake is essentially ready to be mounted on. So we're gonna do that next. Okay, so then you want to install your intake bolts, all 4, not the 5th. You do not want to yet install the one of the hole we trimmed. So that one we're gonna save for last, but all the others can be installed at this time. They really make these intakes easy to attach. I love it. When you compare this to like a Miata intake, this is so much easier. This guy, and oh, there it is. I'm like, I saw it. And the clipped washer would reference that guy right there. So make sure your washer's not upside down. And basically, you are back to your M6, I would assume. Yep. NICs on the bolts. Oh yeah. Snug. Intake installed. I still gotta figure out a couple of the things because again, this is for a rear wheel drive application on a front wheel drive motor, so a couple things will be different, but some of them really won't matter, so yeah. Next, our fuel rail. I don't even know what I touched because nothing has anti-seize on it. But like, every time. Every single time. But there's a little bit on the end of the tube. I don't know what I even touched, but it's all over my hand. Awesome. we're gonna put a cap on this right away. That's super annoying. Okay. Next, you got 2 spacers that go right into the top of the intake spacer. This is everything that we've got left. A couple bolts, washers, O-rings, 2 feet, and 2 other feet. So next we are going to mount these feet, these angled ones, to the fuel rail so that we can mount the fuel rail to the spacer. So you're going to take your 4 total, 2 each, screws that require a 4mm Allen and mount them to the fuel rail. Thread locker. Dude, is there anything left in this? Looks like... If I would have known I was almost out of this stuff, I would have frickin' got some when I was at the store. But, okay. Thread locker on. 1. First one installed. All right, last of the 4 bolts. Okay. All right, next is actually our fuel injectors installed. So we've got these nice little plastic caps on them. You don't want to damage the O-ring. There we go. All right, so you're gonna take each cap off. What I always like to do, there it is, little tiny bit of Vaseline on the O-ring before you insert it. Literally just enough to get your hand oily. Run it around the edge of that O-ring. Take that O-ring. Press it right on in. And we got the first one done. And now we're going to repeat that 3 more times. Pretty straightforward. Okay, one thing I will say so far, O-rings are all in. The only thing I don't like is they don't like snap into place. Like they just still have a lot of fucking play in them. So we're gonna see how they go once we actually install the bolts that hold this down snug. I would have to assume once everything's in there, it should be fine, but like, it's almost, I don't know, I already have all the injectors in, but here, I'll take one out to show. Like there's a hole in there, and it would certainly seem that this hole, the top of the injector, would like pop into there or slide into there, but it's almost like it's literally just going to hold itself in with the O-ring, which is possible. The only thing I don't like is there's not like a, and there's nothing in the instructions as to, okay, just rest it in there, go until you hear a snap. There's nothing. It's just put the O-rings in, or put the injectors in, put some lubricate on the O-rings. Not a whole lot of, you know, instructions, but it's okay. We're going to put them on just how they are and tighten everything down and see how it goes. So put this back in. Yep. And then you get 2 bolts. Each bolt gets a washer. Bolt goes through. And then there's an O-ring that goes on the bottom of the bolt. I think I'm going to everything gets a little bit of jelly, or everything gets a little bit of Aquaphor, we'll say. Same shit. So, everything's lubricated. And that's your port injection kit. These, so this kind of threw me off. Your bolts go in straight up and down. The injectors go in at a slight angle. So if you did what I did and you put the O-ring on the bolt first as it was like, so it held the bolt in place, just do everything simultaneously a little bit at a time, because these injectors need to come in like this and the bolts need to go in like this. So just take your time with that. But otherwise, yeah. These injectors came with connectors. I'm gonna have to make a whole custom harness, which is gonna be a real pain in the butt. I'm really not too excited about it. But that'll be a later project. So yeah, I am going to get the fuel pressure regulator installed. I believe I'm gonna end up going with it, I don't know, somewhere on this end. Definitely not on this end, just because with this, I'm gonna keep this, there's no room. I'm gonna get a plug for that, because everything is going to be right off here. So, yeah, that's where we're at. That's the port injection kit. If you stuck around this long, leave a like or don't, doesn't really matter. But next we are going to wait for our pipe to mount the brand new turbo onto the hot side. That's all I'm waiting for. Is FedEx, or I'm sorry, UPS lost the gosh darn pipe that was made. So we're just waiting on that, and then we're gonna keep going on. Thanks for sticking around.